Hello, population of spaceship Earth. This is Here speaking. Let's start in the Financial Times. Beyond BRICS and Argentina's new oil rules are worse than nationalization. Basically, the article says that Kirchner, who's the chick what's in charge down Argentina way, is going off the rails a bit, and Argentina is doomed. That's it. Number 2 is Financial Times again. US buyers turn to Brazil for cheap corn. The US is turning to Brazil for help with corn supplies as low stocks and the worst drought in half a century haunt the world's leading grain exporter. United States of America, importing from Brazil. Meat companies, including top pork producer Smithfield, have arranged to ship Brazilian corn to the US East Coast as it has become cheaper than rations from the US Corn Belt, according to people familiar with the transactions. Financial Times for number 3, US politics and policy. US meat producers seek ethanol waiver. The United States livestock and poultry industry urged federal regulators to suspend a government mandate for ethanol use for the first time as severe drought lifts the price of corn feed. A coalition of beef, pork, chicken and dairy producers said the United States renewable fuel standard, which requires billions of gallons of corn-based ethanol to be blended with motor fuel, should be waived in whole or in substantial part for 12 months. Rules and regulations. New York Times. Corn for food, not fuel. It is not often that a stroke of a pen can quickly undo the ravages of nature, but federal regulators now have an opportunity to do just that. Americans' food budgets will be hit hard by the ongoing Midwestern drought, the worst since 1956. Food bills will rise and many farmers will go bust. An act of God, right? Well, the drought itself may be, but a human remedy for some of the fallout is at hand, if only the federal authorities would act by suspending renewable fuel standards that were unwise from the start. The Environmental Protection Agency could divert vast amounts of corn from inefficient ethanol production back into the food chain, where market forces and common sense dictate it should go. Rules and regulations. Oil and gas. Financial Times. BHP takes $2.84 billion write-down over shale. I thought shale was doing so well. Marius Kloppers, chief executive of BHP Billiton, will not take a bonus this year after the world's biggest resources company was forced to take a large write-down against the value of its United States shale gas assets. BHP blamed a glut of gas supply in the US for a $2.84 billion impairment charge against the value of its Fayetteville gas assets, which it acquired for $404.75 billion 18 months ago. So it's well over half that money has gone. Private sector making a bit of a boo-boo. The energy and water collision. What should I read of this? The opening paragraph. Our power sector is built for a water-rich world. Our power sector is built for a water-rich world. Conventional fossil fuel and nuclear power plants require water to cool the steam they generate to make electricity. At some power plants, a lot of the water they withdraw gets evaporated in the cooling process. At others, much of the water is discharged back into its source, albeit hotter. The bottom line, most power plants need a huge, steady supply of water to operate, and in hot, dry summers, that water can become hard to secure. Let's go down to the bottom. Ongoing water too warm, down at the bottom. To prevent hot water from doing harm to fish and other wildlife, power plants typically aren't allowed to discharge cooling water above a certain temperature. Rules and regulations. When power plants bump up against those limits, they can be forced to dial back power reduction or shut down. Alabama's Browns Ferry nuclear plant on the Tennessee River has done just that on several occasions in recent years, cutting its output 3 of the last 5 summers, for example, and for 5 consecutive weeks in one of those years, 2010, household electricity needs were met by other power generators but a higher price, just to save the fish. Rules and regulations are made by people. People are fallible, are people. You and me are people. We would make fallible regulations. And if we did not have any regulations upon us, we would make very fallible decisions. UT San Diego will finish with this. Special report, aquifers, shrink, nation digs deeper. Now, this is one of my favourites, that when your aquifer is going down, the scientific people, well, everybody bloody well knows about it, yeah? And it keeps going down and down and down. And what are we going to do about it? Let's read a couple of bits out of this. It's one of those blog sites that go right to the edge of the blog site. So to get a good shape one, I've had to pull out a lot of information, which you can pause and read if you like, but I'm only going to read the first 4 paragraphs. Deep underground, far out of sight and out of mind for most people, dreams are turning to dust. Few places in Southern California is that more evident than the desert sands of Borrego Springs, where residents, farmers and golf course operators are sucking about 4 times as much water from the ground each year as nature replaces. They've been pumping so hard for so long that the community's main aquifer could essentially run dry after a few more decades. That's a dire possibility. A recent study showed it would be prohibitively expensive to build a pipeline to an outside source. Dimming prospects have left residents scared and angry in a town whose name seems ironic. That's Borrego Springs. Resident Ray Schindler fears the worst. I think that this community is going to run out. But paragraph number 3 was in a few more decades. In a few more decades. Later in the article, where should we read? Here, just the opening. California officials estimate 750,000 wells have been drilled in California and about 20,000 more added each year. They are viewed essentially as property rights with few constraints, though several regions of the state have set rules to curb overuse. Tragedy of the commons. Somebody has to regulate it all, or it's a disaster. Because people will say, well, if I don't use the water, my neighbour will use the water, or the golf course down the road will use the water, so I might as well suck it up and use it as quick as possible. Or they will. Ha ha. What was I going to read of this? Residents of Borrego Springs don't have the option of relying on imported water because they aren't connected to the outside source via aqueducts. Homeowners, golf courses and farmers in the desert town are tapping the region's aquifer system about 4 times faster than it refills. It's quite a long article, that's why it's re-thingied itself. Let's just go to the bottom. Barrigo Water District officials can encourage conservation, but they can't force farmers or golf courses with their own wells to cut back, even though those groups use an estimated 90% of the water. So the agency has proposed a cooperative groundwater management program for the basin, even though entrenched interest suggests that it will be difficult to achieve. Los Angeles lawyers who represent Barrigo growers say the district's efforts have been marked more by demands than cooperation. Shock horror, making litigation more likely. For those residents who think the great solution is just to force all the farmers out or eliminate agriculture in the area, all you are doing is making a lot of lawyers happier, because there will be such a battle. In our state we have property rights, and we have the rule of law, says everybody who wants to do just what they want to do. Rules and regulations are made by fallible people like you and me.